Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest in the Institute of Directors Sustainability webinar series. I'm Kirsty Maxey, and I'll be your host for this event. Just while we're waiting for everyone to join the event, please feel free to introduce yourself via the chat button. Let us know where you're dialing in from. We've got people from all over the UK and many from across the globe, so it's good to see where you're coming from. And you can introduce your companies as well. So it's a good opportunity to network. I'll just wait a couple of minutes while everybody comes in. I think we're almost there. Do feel free to use the chat button to introduce yourselves. Okay, I think we'll start. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the latest in our series on business sustainability. My name is Kirsty Maxey. I'm a member of the Institute of Directors Sustainability Specialist Interest Group, and today we're talking about business ethics and how to build a sustainable business inside and out. We're in association with the Institute of Business Ethics, but before we meet our speakers today, let me tell you just a little about the Institute of Directors, because I don't think everybody is a member today. So here we believe that better directors make better businesses, and for less than £45 a month, membership provides you with access to a whole range of useful business tools, from networking to free tax and legal advice, plus some great places to meet. One of the key benefits is our professional training programs, which are designed and delivered by directors for directors all over the world. And they've helped to set the standard for good corporate governance, which leads us nicely into what we're talking about today. I think despite all the news to the contrary, we believe ethical business practices have become more crucial than ever in today's economy. They're more than just a moral compass. They are a strategic advantage that can drive performance, growth, and long-term sustainability. And in fact, a new report out by Gallagher found that the ethical practices have become crucial in maintaining stakeholder trust, attracting talent, and meeting the rising demand for responsible business conduct. Which is why today I'm delighted that we are joined by a panel who are at the forefront of the move towards stronger business ethics. We'll be discussing what's driving their focus, the obstacles to and opportunities for wider adoption, and their views on some of the practical steps businesses can take to create real and sustainable change. Our format this afternoon will be for the panel to talk for around 45 minutes, followed by an opportunity to ask questions. So please put your questions into the Q&A panel as we go through. For anybody who doesn't know where that is, just if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a Q&A there, and you can start to ask questions. And yes, somebody's just said that the chat has been disabled. So I think that's the Institute of Directors have control of that. So we will continue on using the Q&A button. Thank you. Okay, so let's start by introducing the panel today. First up, we've got Lauren Branston, the CEO of the Institute of Business Ethics. Lauren has over 25 years experience in culture, governance and sustainability at global firms such as Starbucks, Coca-Cola, Pfizer, Grant Thornton. She serves on boards and advisory panels for the Soil Association and UCL Centre for Ethics and Law. Welcome to you, Lauren.
Thank you very much for having me.
Next up is Professor Simon Snedden from the University of Northampton, where he teaches and researches environmental law and social justice, focusing on the ethical use of green technology and associated social and environmental costs. Welcome, Simon.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
Next, we have Julietta Puig, the former Group Head of ESG Compliance at HSBC. Julietta has over 30 years experience in governance, audit and compliance, with 9 years as a non-exec director. She advises boards on sustainability-linked finance. Welcome, Julietta.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have the remarkable Sabrina Shady, multi-award-winning ethics and equity executive. Sabrina is a consultant and small business owner dedicated to addressing inequalities in business and empowering enterprises through community development and collaboration. Welcome to you, Sabrina.
Thank you so much.
So now we've met the speakers for today, let me start by coming to you, Lauren. Tell us a little bit about the IBE and what you mean by business ethics.
Thanks so much, Kirsty. And I think Heather is helping me with the slides. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. If we can go to the next slide, thank you. So really delighted to be talking about ethics as strategy, building sustainable business from the inside out today. I just wanted to start a little bit about us. So who are we, the IBE? We provide a space for people to discuss, to question, to explore business ethics. Our role is simple: to help organisations, leaders, and indeed kind of people at every level to ask themselves the right questions about what they do and how they do it and why. If you go to the next slide, please. And I need to start by thanking our generous supporters. We're a non-profit funded by the people on this slide, most of whom you can see here. Without them, none of IBE's work would be possible. So very grateful to our supporters. And if any of our supporters are listening or today, thank you so much. Next slide, please. So enough about us. Let's ask, what is ethics as a starting point? Ethics is not an abstract academic word, although it can seem that way. So for me, it's kind of good to start being clear about what we mean at the IBE about what is ethics. And it's really about choices. It's about the values we hold, the principles we're prepared to stand by, even when it's costly, even when it's difficult. In fact, ethics asks not just what is legal, not just what is profitable, but what is fair, what is sustainable, and what is human. So being clear about your values is key. And there are a range of values like integrity, honesty, respect, dignity, compassion, and fairness. And then it's thinking about values in decision making. So at the IBE, we talk about ethics being values in action. And so in decision making, it's about improving the process of questioning, exploring and defending your values, understanding in the process your impact on stakeholders in reality and without bias. So grounding yourself in the perspective of others. And I'm delighted we're going to be hearing some more, I hope, today from Simon on how to include nature as one of your stakeholders. And of course, all of this includes thinking about future generations as key stakeholders for business. At the IBE, we also think about values in terms of leadership and culture. So understanding what is ethical leadership, what that takes, the competencies, the skills, the behaviours and the knowledge. Lots of leaders like to say, of course, I'm ethical. And in fact, there's research to show that people generally, and the more senior they get, tend to overestimate their ability to be ethical. So it's really for me about having a humble approach to that and thinking about what is it that I need to learn to ensure that in the very real pressures you face as leaders of organizations and board directors, I can maintain my own ethical leadership approach. And finally, creating an ethical culture that's fair, where people understand what's expected of them and can speak up, listen, act, and learn. That's also really important to the work of the IBE. So next slide, please, Heather. Thank you. So what do we mean about when I say ethical culture? And I'm just going to spend a little bit of time on this now. And our Ethics at Work research closely looks at this topic, and you can refer to it. We make it freely available to everybody. You can find it on our website if you're interested. But in that, the evidence is clear that ethics at work is about lived experience. And you need a few things to create an ethical culture, and it's not easy to do. You know, the pressures to be unethical are real and constant. You need, though, expectations to be clear, and that means having a quality code of ethics or code of conduct, to have helplines available, guidance, training, trusted ways to raise concerns are all really important and foundational steps to creating an ethical culture. And that's because speaking up is so fundamental and needs to be encouraged and safe for everyone. So speaking up in meetings in the normal course of the day, of course, but also if you have a concern, having that guidance, such as a helpline, a trusted way to raise concerns is absolutely critical. The research shows that fear of retaliation or fear generally around speaking up will really decrease the ability of people to feel that they can speak up freely. So that is a crucial part of listening, learning, and acting in a way that is demonstrably valued within the organisation. You're taking action as a result of what you're hearing, so people don't feel it's pointless to speak up, to have ideas, to debate, to discuss. And I think leaders play such a critical role here. For the directors on the call, this is especially relevant. You know, you are role models, guardians of culture. You can embody values, demonstrating through your words, your actions and behaviours that your organisation's commitments are real. Next slide, please. Thank you, Heather. So in terms of ethics as strategy in building a sustainable organisation from the inside out, it's clear that there is overlap between ethics and sustainability. Both are concerned with long-term value creation, both are about stakeholders, both are about impact. I think, and perhaps that's because of the role that I have, I think of ethics as a foundation stone to sustainability. Perhaps you can say sustainability is ethics through time, given that sustainability is about a commitment to future generations. Next slide, please, Heather. Thank you. When I started working in corporate sustainability back in the 1990s, it all seemed possible. Maybe I was naive. In fact, I think I definitely was, but that's to one side. But targets were set, goals were declared, glossy reports were written, and I wanted to believe. But today, looking back, let's be honest, much of it was superficial, targets weren't met, goals weren't achieved. And people have become, quite rightly, I think, a little cynical, and things have got harder, not easier in the face of this. I think ethical leadership is more, not less important. As Alison Taylor said in our last annual lecture, doing business today is more complex than ever. And I think she's right. I think decision making is difficult. Trade-offs are real in the face of conflicts, rising inequality, polarization that we've seen so clearly today, you know, coming out of the news in the US, decline of nature, climate crisis, misinformation and disinformation. And so in the face of that complexity, I believe we need ethics more than ever because the way forward is complex and uncertain. Next slide, please, Heather. Thank you. And if there's one point that I would love us to kind of, that I would love to make in the context of this conversation about sustainability today in relation to business ethics, I think we all need to be really honest about what's possible. What are the risks, to your sustainability plan? Can you do it? Or what needs to change? Because for creating long-term value in an ethical and sustainable way, I think it's very difficult from here. What are the options? What is it that's possible or not possible? I think that is a really interesting conversation. And maybe that's because the system isn't fair or it doesn't incentivize sustainable change in the way that we need it to. And I think if we could all be a bit more honest about that and what we can't do alone, we could start to see the kinds of shifts and the potential of business to drive transformative change coming to life in a way that perhaps it hasn't since the 1990s. Let's be honest about what we can't do alone. Let's influence for good so that we can drive or incentivize changes that help everyone become more sustainable. I think about it in the same way as creating ethical culture within organizations. In the same way as we need to speak up within organizations, we need to speak up outside of organizations and advocate for the change that we need in the world. Next slide. So I'll finish with this thought. An ethical approach to business is better in many ways. It steers you away from risk. It points you towards opportunity. It provides more innovative, more creative space within organizations to drive change. It builds trust. And I think fundamentally it's better for business. And I think it moves us towards fairer, more sustainable businesses and society. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lauren. That was great. Great setup for people understanding the role of ethics in business. One of the questions that comes up quite a lot when you're talking about this subject is, for smaller businesses, their focus on just making money, performance is number one. Does having strong business ethics, does it make you a better performing company in your view?
Yes, I think there's lots of evidence to show that if you have a business that is considering business ethics as a strategic asset, that it's then thinking about culture in a way that ties to its strategy and that performance is improved as a result. And there's lots of research to show that that is the case. And I understand the pressures are real, the pressures to meet demands, whether you're a small or a large business, are real. But in a way, the more that you do to create that space and invest that time and effort in becoming ethical, I believe that what the evidence shows is that the results are short-term better management around risks, but also long-term better management about risks and better management for opportunity in all aspects, for people, for your business, for your core business, and for your impact in society. So yeah, I would say it does, but it can feel, I know exactly what you mean, it can sometimes feel counterintuitive. So, let's make this quickly, let's cut corners, let's not talk about this, let's try and get away with this, and that is where your approach is not ethical. But I would say pausing and taking a moment to reflect on a different way to go about things is often where the benefits lie.
Yes, thank you. That's very helpful. So if anybody's got any questions for Lauren, please do put them in the Q&A. That is definitely working. So add them in and we will get to those at the end of the session. Next up, I'm delighted to introduce Simon Snedden from the University of Northampton, Simon, I know you've got quite a few views in terms of thinking about ethics from a wider perspective. So tell us how you view ethics.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to come and talk today. Next slide, please. So my approach this is from an ethical perspective initially, and as an environmental lawyer, we're used to a lot of standards that get put in place for the way industries work, and the best appropriate techniques, best appropriate technology, the BAT standard is fairly normal. One I came across as a student, and that was 30 years ago, was an unofficial acronym, which was CATNIP, which is the cheapest available technique not involving prosecution. And that kind of links up to some of the thoughts of Baron Thurlow back in the 18th century, who may or may not have said, this is the quote people know about law and corporations, did you ever expect a corporation to have a conscience when it has no soul to be damned and no body to be kicked? It's not actually clear whether they ever said that or whether it's just misattributed later. But more than a century later, early 20th century, Oliver Wendell Holmes, who was a Associate Justice of the US Supreme Court, came up with the approach ethically that all companies are the bad man, and the bad man obeys the law only when the bad man fears being caught and punished more. So, and that kind of links to the idea of CATNIP and the idea of doing what you have to do for compliance. And I think this is one of the dangers of treating ethics as a code of conduct. And Lauren's already mentioned some of this already. But if businesses, if companies, if directors think of ethics as something you have to do in order to meet compliance, then we're not going to get proper engagement. And we have, again, as Lauren said, we have this kind of 21st century politicization of ethics and sustainability, which is not helping. It's not helping anybody on either side of the debate. It's radicalizing people, which is terrible. But if you treat ethics as a code of conduct, as a tick box exercise, then it's never going to be anything more than surface level. You'll do what you need to do to get by, and sustainability will become one of the boxes you tick in order to get by, in order to meet your requirements. But it's never going to be fully embedded within the organization. Next slide, please. And I have to say, these are AI generated images, so they're as an environmental lawyer, I'm aware of the environmental impact of AI, but I can't draw. So treating ethics as a state of being, if you embrace ethics as part of who you are, ethical behavior as part of who you are, both as a director, but also in the sense of the corporation, in order to go beyond the minimum. So obvious example, things like minimum wage. We know from the news today that a record number of companies have been fined in the last year for employing migrant workers at lower than minimum wage. Minimum wage is a legal standard. Why not go beyond that? Why not go for living wage? Minimum wage is the ethics as a tick box exercise. Living wage is ethics because it's the right thing to do. And it is more expensive. This is part of the problem. It's a tough sell. Because it's often more expensive to do the thing which is ethically correct. But it's better long term. It opens up a lot more doors. Again, come back to what Lauren was saying, a lot of the surveys suggest that ethics is becoming important to consumers, to stakeholders. If you don't have to consciously think about what you're doing and whether it's ethical, then it will eventually become that way. And I'm gonna box myself into an age bracket now by thinking of people like Eric Clapton, Tommy Iommi, Bonnie Raitt, Nancy Wilson, all fantastic guitarists. none of them played guitar thinking, oh, I must move from an F sharp into an A flat, or I must do this. They played guitar brilliantly because the notes were embedded. That was what they did. I could probably, I've read the Teach Yourself to Play Guitar in a Day book several times. It hasn't worked. But I know where the notes go and I know what the fretboard does. I'll never play as well as Clapton because it's not who I am. I will be learning the steps. I can say the right words. I can trot them out parrot fashion. And it's the same with ethics. If you embed it, it becomes better. And it links to, next slide, please. It links to the idea of expanding who the stakeholders are. Sustainable development, the Brundtland Commission, everything that's gone on since then, meeting the needs of future generations while not compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. I explore this with my students. There's a whole lot of holes in this debate, mainly what's a need and what's a want, but we'll skip that for today. Almost always we think of that as future generations of people. And if I'm honest, we almost always think about it as future generations of people like us. Whoever us happens to be. We think of my family, my children, my grandchildren, my cousins, the people who are like me. What we don't do, and what I think we should do, is widen this scope of stakeholders. So we have people on the board of depending on the size of the company, who look at finance. So they deal with the profit side of the people, profit, planet. I've added compliance to there, but people, profit, planet. Finance deal with that. HR deal with the people. Legal teams deal with the compliance. And yes, the legal team will often give advice, which is how close can you get to the regulations without technically breaching them. I was talking to a director before, he was doing no names, no pack drill. And his answer was in relation to what they're doing, well, it's not technically illegal. That's not ethics as a state of being. That's how close can you shave it. And the temptations are there. Unethical behavior is often quicker, it's often cheaper, and often people don't get found out. How you sleep at night is a different question. But there's very rarely a seat on the board for nature. The only company I know that's ever done it is Faith in Nature, the cosmetics company, who appointed a nature guardian to the board in 2022. And they're on their second one now. It's a 2-year post. As far as I'm aware, they're the only company ever to do this globally. No one's done it. But the role of the nature guardian was to speak for nature in board meetings and to ensure the interests of nature are considered in all business decisions made by the company. And this is having a nature guardian on the board is the ethics as a state of being equivalent, the building up of that, as having, well, X is the board member for environment, and that covers all the environment stuff we have to do, or maybe for CSR. It takes it beyond that. And with a nature guardian on board, engaging with sustainability and all the stakeholders, so sustainability for humans and for the planet as well, because however good it is for us, if the planet goes, we're a little bit stuck. That will become deeper and better. Like I say, Faith in Nature is still the only company to do it. If any of the companies who are here today wanted to do it, there are organizations who will help. I'm not a member of any of them, but so I've got no skin in the game. But I can put you in touch with them and give you the names later. I think I'm going to leave it there because I think I've probably used up my time. I forgot to put my stopwatch on. I'm very sorry.
Simon, that was great. No, don't worry, we're all on time, so that's fantastic. And when you think about companies as you said, a lot of companies might have a sustainability head on their boards, but what you're saying is it should go beyond that. Sustainability doesn't include everything, and having someone who actually just focuses on the nature part would create a much stronger board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's tough to do. I've spoken about this to colleagues before, and they said, well, nature, how do you represent nature? Nature would clearly be a legal fiction. They don't seem to get the fact that a corporation is also a legal fiction. So we've crossed that bridge. We can represent companies as legal persons. So making nature into a legal person, which Ecuador has done, various other countries are trying to do it within their constitution, makes that embeddedness of nature and sustainability much, much stronger. It's not simply a case of giving somebody a new name badge and saying, right, as of tomorrow, you're the nature guardian. It's deeper than that, and it takes some time. But I think it would be worthwhile.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think we're seeing, businesses start to take the environment more seriously. And you're seeing the consumer demand. Customers are actually demanding, to know where their food comes from, for instance. So we are starting to see some of that behaviour translating. Thank you for that, Simon. And if anybody's got any questions for Simon, again, do please use the Q&A. I will come back to that at the end of the session, and we can put any questions to Simon on that. Thank you. So next up, we have Julieta. Welcome, Julieta, and thank you for being here. I think, Julieta, you're going to be thinking about things a little bit from more of a finance perspective.
Yes, I will. I cannot forget my compliance hat, never. It's always embedded, is a embedded note, as Simon said. But I will start my part with a pause. And the reason is because we have just listened brilliant presentation, brilliant reflection from Laura and Simon. And that will give us time to gain perspective. What we are doing here today is not a lecture, it's not a preaching, it's a boardroom reflection. And if, as Lauren has pointed out, we need to be humble during this kind of difficult time, because we know we don't know many things. And then I would like to ask you to travel in time and to think you were sitting on a board of like 100 years ago, facing the mega trends of that time, that was electrification. And that time we could see that we had the board had two choices, the board members. One was ignore, resist, or the other choice was embrace. And the winners embraced the new technology, and I can bet they were more humble than the losers. And then I think this is important to put us to set up the scene and say what we are doing here today. We are now facing similar challenges, and have this kind of conversations have been taking place for years, decades, and centuries. But the challenges are just different. But they are transformative as the electrification challenge that time. Then for next slide, I would bring my perspective, please. The next slide, Kirst. Yeah. One thing I like to remind is it's not all about climate change or nature. I think we have been making mistakes or putting this as the only subject on the table. We need to be mindful, business owners in the room, that it's their life, our life is not only about climate change. There are three mega trends I put here with, and you can list more, but climate change is definitely one of them. And I'd like to also, during this difficult year, I would like to remind that megatrends don't care about politics, what the politicians think, or would they agree, or they don't agree. And also, as economists, my background is capital markets are usually quite incompetent to anticipate systemic risks. And they do this when it's too late, usually. But good directors must not make that mistake. We cannot afford to make mistakes like this. Then megatrends will be there, politicians or the markets want to believe or not. And that's why we are here. We need to remind ourselves and to learn from each other on what that will mean. And moving to the next one, that will bring us to the first hard question. What does ethics have to do with sustainability? And this is exactly, I'm voicing what Simon Lawrence said. In my, I'm answering this question from my compliance and risk hat and my long experience on many different companies. My question my answer to this question has nothing to do and has everything to do. And that is exactly what Simon said and Lawrence also said. What matters to ethics is the why you are deciding doing this. Is because of duty, is because of the rules someone is asking you to do. Then we move to the result that will come from that duty. It's very unlikely to be sustainable, and sustainability is about impact, as Lauren said as well. And unfortunately, I have seen more companies than I would like to have seen in my life that took that route. And the other route is choice. And choice, belief, it's not about philanthropy. It's not about because I want to do good things only. No, it's because I truly believe it's the right thing to do. And then you increase your likelihood of more lasting impacts. Then sustainability will last. Then this is where we find the direct link to sustainability. And the context we are living in, and by the way, today is September 11th, and sad day for all of us, and also because of things that are happening as we speak. And duty and rules and governments and institutions are dissolving during these times. And this is good news for companies that only do things because of rules. I have good news for them. They are free to go. They don't need to do anything anymore. But what I promise is good customers, talent people, and the future will not follow them. Then it's really important that it's a time we need to find our wrong rules, our community. Lauren said we don't do anything alone, but that will not come from governments anymore. And that is for me my suggestion, a very specific suggestion to directors. Ask your CEO, ask your team why they are doing this or that. If they answer it's because of rules, I strongly recommend you to move away. that is not the right place to be, is not sustainable, you are going to waste your time. Then this is going to the second question, moving to the second question of this webinar, and then I now put my compliance hat aside, and I will respond from my board and my sustainable finance experience. Does sustainability create value? Absolutely, 100%, yes. And if you are not finding value streams from sustainability, or you are not asking the right questions, or you are asking the wrong people, then I found 3 drivers of value creation. One is risk mitigation. I cannot forget that it's my notes embedded, as Simon said. But the fines from risk is the weakest reason, the wrong reason. When we talk about risk, we talk about what Simon said. Is about nature, is about water supply, is about soil deprivation, is about flood, is about everything. It's about the strategic risk of risk making, wrong decision, as Lauren said, decision make. And that is when you look from there, you expand your stakeholders, as Simon rightly pointed out, is stakeholder consideration. And here you are not going to do things because of the stakeholders. You need to think about that you are doing things because of you. This is a balance sheet issue. If you have time, we can cover more numbers. It's a really serious issue, how much profit at stake we have because of bad risk management. And then we move to the other 2 parts that I like most: business model opportunities. They are second, business model opportunities and capital raising opportunities. They make you thrive. This is where you really find the next level of value. And my favorite subject is sustainable finance. Then I'll talk a bit more about capital raising. Something people don't get: sustainable finance today is already mainstream. In Europe, for example, 60% of all assets under management, not philanthropy, not all assets, investments they have, is sustainability related. Article 8 and 9, and it's a technical thing, but it's sustainability related for some way. Investors want to put their money in the right pocket, and the right pocket could be your pocket, my pocket, our company pocket. But if you don't, then it's important. CFOs need to be paying attention. There are sustainable finance solutions for all sectors, all sizes of companies. If you haven't found that yet, it's because you're not looking to the right pool. And I'm not talking only about Europe. UK has decided, it's a government policy, to be the sustainable finance capital of the world. Then that will mean money. Barclays has already included as important thing and sustainable in their loan portfolio is nature-based targets, nature-based consideration. This is recent. It's not something. It's from months ago. And an example of company that is already taking that route as well is Natura, that bought Body Shop, for example. They decided that they announced it 2 weeks ago that they are only going to issue sustainable debt. They are not going to conventional debt anymore. And here lies the beauty. Sustainable finance, sustainable debt is commitment. It shows that you are serious about your profit, putting your profit at risk in related to sustainability. That you take you to the next level of investors, into other conversations, to people that are really interested to find you. This is basically my message from now. For now.
Thank you, Julieta. That was great. And I hadn't appreciated just how widely available sustainable finance was. So if you're listening here today, then what you're saying is that you can actually find sustainable finance solutions from a wide group of high street names as well. It's just about asking the right questions.
Exactly, and engaging the CFO. In my most successful experience, is my main stakeholder is the CFO. Is not necessarily the sustainability head. They need to be in the room, but the CFO needs to be there, the main one.
So it's asking those questions and pushing for those kind of different solutions that are available out there. Yeah, thank you. If anybody's got any questions on sustainable finance, Julieta is an absolute expert in this area. So please do ask the questions in the Q&A and we'll come back to that at the end. And then finally, I'm very delighted to introduce Sabrina, multi-award-winning ethics and equality exec. Sabrina's got lots of information and help and guidance for businesses. You run a small to medium-sized business yourself, so you really get the kind of practical steps on this, Sabrina.
Yeah, we actually run two. So one of our businesses is a business network, which supports exactly these kinds of ecosystems that we're talking about today around ethically values-led businesses that are really aware of their supply chain and very much aiming to improve, not just through their services, but through the ecosystems we're part of. And then my consultancy, which is the ethics and equity, like we have an academy and training and all of that great stuff. So a lot of the work we do is really to empower and uplift SMEs. How do we get small businesses doing great work and hitting that really high quality that we all came into this space to be? We wanted to be leaders. We didn't want to be damaging the environment or, you know, extractive kind of mechanisms. We wanted to do things that build community and build value. We know that small businesses make up the biggest part of the UK economy. We know that ethical businesses are more likely to grow around about 3 times faster. That's what the research currently says, between 8% and 3 times faster, depending on who you ask. So that's a really good incentive in terms of business case for why we should be ethical. But actually, there's lots of simple ways we can do it. And the previous speakers have got so much, you know, advanced knowledge in this space, and it can be a little bit overwhelming for the average kind of director, SME leader. Oh, well, what does all that mean and how do I implement it in real terms? The Institute of Business Ethics have some great resources, and they've actually got a whole toolkit around establishing your code of ethics if you're at a very early starting point. The IOD also have some great free resources that you can tap into around establishing your governance and the frameworks that you need to be acting within to make sure you're hitting those kind of quality marks and ethical structures. We have like a decision tree is a really good place to start, where you kind of ask yourself those questions around, you know, do we have clearly defined ethics in our organization? Do we have a values statement? And if not, where is it and how would you build one? Asking yourself around, you know, is your business a values-led business? If it is, you should kind of have that stuff already mapped. If it's not, you can kind of build it because you know what your ethics are, you know where your values stand as an organization. And actually you know, writing that stuff sort of after the fact is not a problem. Make it public, let people know, talk to your team about it, make sure your staff and your employees are really aware of the fact you want to be seen as a values-led organization and you want to lead in the space. I think creating the ecosystem is a really important part of the conversation. So coming along to events like this, hearing what's going on, seeing the ways that you can tap into what's already happening. You haven't got to start from scratch and you're not on your own, I think is probably some of the best messages we can get out there. There's lots and lots of things you can tap into. There's lots of expertise, as you can see on this panel today, who are more than happy to share links and mechanisms and toolkits or resources for people. I think one of the things that we often forget as small businesses is the messaging. You can have a really good values-based organisation doing all the ethical, resourcing and all of that stuff, and you don't tell anyone. So nobody knows that's what you're doing. And all of your hard work kind of goes under the radar. So having your communications really upfront, having that stuff on your website, something like, and it can be as simple as joining the Good Business Charter. It's quite low in terms of expense. It's not as expensive as like these ISO accreditations that people often go for. It's much more low key, but it hits all of the 10 primary areas of compliance and good practice. And there is quite a gap between what's compliant and what's good practice. So go along to the Good Business Charter website. They are really, really clear on what they do and why they do it. And we're talking about things like living wage, not minimum wage. We're talking about engaging your stakeholders in open communication and getting that feedback. We're talking about prompt payment. We're talking about paying your fair taxes. So it's all things that we would all sign up to. I think the 10 components, I'd be really surprised if there's any business owners who went, no, I don't want to be part of that. I think that's a terrible idea, because all of these things don't just lead to, as we've heard earlier, better stakeholder engagement, better stakeholder trust. They actually support things like staff retention, because employees want to be working for an organisation that does something that is good. None of us want to be the henchman for the evil villain, polluting the environment and doing all that terrible stuff. None of us want to work in those spaces. We all want to be part of something that we see adding value to our society and our community. So it improves our retention, but it also enables us to, as we said, the risk mitigation and the reputational build. So having your ethical practice, decision-making tree around how you do your ethics, around making that transparent and being accountable as a leader in the space. So, welcoming the condemnation when you sometimes might get it wrong. Asking, do your policies meet the purpose for what you're doing? Are they fit for purpose? Because quite often policies were written quite a long time ago. They get put on a shelf and ignored because you've got it now and you don't have to do anything with it. But actually having them as living, breathing documents that you refer back to and say, is this project, the new project, the new website, the new, recruitment drive, does it meet our ethical practice? Does it meet our requirements? And is it fit for purpose for what we're trying to achieve? And having those kinds of questions and having a toolkit that helps us make those decisions can really drive that embedding of this practice as daily habit in our operations. So we encourage what we would call like an EEIA, which is an equality and environmental impact assessment. And by putting something like that in place, it means that all your decisions then meet those requirements as it aligns to your policies, your values, and your purpose as an organisation.
Thank you, Sabrina. That's great. Some really practical advice there. One of the things that I get asked a lot about is when it comes to small business, you've got so many things that you're trying to juggle. You just don't have time for all of this. And I think one of the things that people perhaps find difficult is to include the rest of their team in some of this kind of decision making and involvement. Have you got any advice around that?
Yeah, so we often provide supporting services for small teams by bringing in that external expertise on a project by project basis. Sometimes having that expert from within your community, from within your environment, you can tap other people in to give you some expertise, to give you some insight that you wouldn't otherwise have. I think tapping into universities, because they often can connect you with graduates who will engage without necessarily charging you an absolute fortune. So there's lots and lots of expertise out in the world that you can engage with without having to find huge amounts of resource or time. I think the IOD, obviously, especially if you're a member, they have a ton of resources and lots of helplines that you can engage with. But I think the most sort of simple way is actually do the business networking, find other small businesses or slightly larger enterprises who have done the work before you, and work with them, collaborate with them to kind of follow in their footsteps and build that into a much more kind of community-led approach to how we do sustainability and ethics.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. And the thing that I always say is that you might not be passionate about everything. No, nobody is. So it's also looking at your team and recognizing that some of them have real passions for some of the things that we're talking about today, and embracing that and engaging with them. They will often go out of their way to do extra things to really drive that within the business as well. So it's not just on you, the business leader. Getting everybody involved in this where there is a passion, I think, is really, really helpful. And it gets all that kind of value shared in a much more kind of equal way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got a few questions. If anybody's got any more questions, please do put them in the Q&A. First up, let's go to Christopher Fry. Christopher's asking, we do lots of work with SMEs, such as cohorts using sustainability business trackers, tools, benchmarking. Does the IBE's research or other insights indicate different or very similar approaches to ethics in micro, small and medium businesses? I think this is probably one for you, Lauren.
Yeah, thanks. And just so great to hear the rest of the panel with all of our different perspectives on this. It's brilliant. Thanks for bringing us together, Kirsty. Yeah, so it's very different. I think Sabrina touched on this in what she said, that in small, medium-sized enterprises, you don't have the resources, the formal team, the kind of the money to create, the guidance and the policies that you would have or expect to have in a large organization. So I think it's about not worrying about that too much, but trying to take steps that you can, move from a very informal place to something that's a little bit more formalized. And I think we, as Sabrina said, we've got, and I'd be delighted to send details to, if you email info@ibe.org.uk, we'll send you resources that you can use to guide you through that process of moving from thinking about this, that it's kind of abstract or complex, to kind of steps to break it down and make it easy. So how do you understand where your culture is right now? What are the values that you're operating to immediately? What is the way in which you're thinking about speak up? How do you put ethics into practice, and how do you review and refine? Start where you are and making some steps. If you're in an SME, you can make huge progress, but just start to kind of document it. And as I say, we've got resources freely available. If anybody on the call would like to have more information sent to them, info@. But yeah, no, great.
That's great. Thank you, Lauren. Next question up from Fiona Hannon. This is a really great question and a difficult one as well. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody's got a view on this. She asks, given the losers 100 years ago, she's referring here to what Julie Eder was talking about, were also the people who lit the lights and did the manual labour, that supported the things that became obsolete. How would you see an ethical approach to AI rollout being done in businesses when it comes to replacement of humans at a rate that society cannot keep up with? It appears to be a megatrend that is unavoidable and being rolled out without oversight of the wider impact on society. This is definitely a question that is coming up all the time within my business. So yeah, who wants to answer this one? Anybody got a view?
I'm happy to. Oh, Julie Eder, did you want to go? Because I answered the last.
I know it's. I don't know. Juliet probably. Anybody go first, please.
Okay. Yeah, I would say that this is in the same way as sustainability is such a serious issue. It's an issue we need to take seriously. AI. That we need to treat it as we would any other issue, and think very carefully about what do we want to do as an ethical business in relation to AI. I think it's very interesting that there's this assumption that and it's probably correct to a certain extent, that AI is going to take jobs, but I think we need to think really carefully about how we support people in work to work with AI and augment work in an appropriate way. And that's both kind of a challenge from a looking after your people, and a challenge for the human resources department, I'd argue, or people and culture teams, to think about how you provide people with the skills that they need, and particularly critical thinking skills to understand what is AI and how do I use it in a way that minimizes risk and maximizes appropriate opportunity. And more people are going to be needing that over the next 10 years. I think the other bit for me that's critical, and we did some research and also available on our website around the ethics of AI, and we can see a discrepancy in the amount of guidance that people in work are having on AI, and they're really concerned about it, very high levels of concern coupled with not a lot of guidance. So we need to catch up. It needs to be embedded into things like codes of ethics, into how you talk about speak up. It shouldn't just be an issue that we're afraid to walk up to. So I think that's really important. It is going to radically change, the future of work, but I think that we need to think we're not quite clear. It's back to that point I made about uncertainty, and how you deal with that uncertainty is really important. So I think there's work to be done. I think business ethics can help, but I also do think there's systemic challenges there, to my point about speaking up and corporate advocacy, that we need to think very seriously about. And all of us have a role to play in thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Anybody else want to add to that? Simon, Julieta?
Yeah, maybe it's thinking on over what Lauren has just said, and I agree. What I see is during these times where the rules are dissolving, we are actually creating a state of ethics feudalism, where we need to look at ourselves and find our own answer. And what she said is trying to make sure that you do this right for your company. Think about the goods and pros. Don't reject, don't ignore. It's coming to stay. Then embrace, but embrace with care. And then in your micro road, this is where the only thing you can control is there. It's your decision about your people that depend on you. And also embrace good things. So today we saw a headline on NHS, and then it's also AI is good to cope with aging megatrend and disease and everything. And this is one part of the thing I would like to say, that is it's my responsibility. Your responsibility is like we don't have anyone to protect us. But said that, you have political parties, you have a government agenda that you need to take part. You need to think who is downplaying this risk, who is overplaying this risk, who are you going to vote for, basically. And you are part of a society. Thanks God we are still democratic. Then it's then you can still live without that, relying a bit on rules and government, than trying to make the right decision when you vote, and pay attention what they are going to, with your candidates are saying about that.
Thank you, Julieta. Yeah, it's a tough one, and I work in the creative industry, and so I've got a lot of writers and artists, and it's something that we debate day in, day out, and encourage everybody to debate, because I don't think there are any answers right now on anything, but I think trying to find ways of using it ethically is interesting in itself, and but also trying to ensure that you are open to those kind of challenges and questions within the organisation, so people feel that they can talk about this in an open way is really important. Just coming to the next. Oh, sorry, Simon.
It's just a very quick jump in just to say, pretty much every university in the country is looking at how we deal with students and AI to prepare them to come and work in your businesses. So reach out to your local university.
I think what are they saying, Simon?
We're waiting for the industry to tell us what they want. And the industry's waiting for us to tell us what we're going to do. It's the same in HE as it is in industry, in business. No one really knows yet. We know it's going to be changed. We don't know how it's going to change. We're looking at lawyers because I'm in the law team, and how a lawyer is going to change. The Solicitors Regulation Authority earlier this year allowed its first entirely AI law firm, so that's got some people thinking. I know someone was telling me in Canada, if you prepare your costs for your client and you don't use AI, using AI will make it cheaper. And if you don't use AI, you get paid the cheaper rate. So I haven't explored, that's the anecdote, but I definitely talk to your local university because we're all in the same boat. We really want to get students who go into work. Employability is a massive thing for us. If we prepare students for what your business was like 10 years ago, it doesn't help us, it doesn't help you. So if we can widen that dialogue, that'd be brilliant. I think I'm probably honor bound to say come to Northampton, but go to whoever's closest, whoever you've got a relationship with.
And I think the thing is, it's, we're not talking about one AI here. We're talking about literally thousands and thousands and thousands. And I think, without this becoming all about AI, there is some really good that's coming out of it. I think it was O2 that launched a campaign using AI to halt the scammers. So they basically created a fictional granny who would intercept scammers on telephones and keep them held up. So there is some AI being used for really good purposes as well. Next question on the list is how can you conduct business ethically in a ethical world, and where most of the opportunities you deal with are either not ethical or they're not interested in ethics. It's very hard. Has anybody got some advice on this? I think we're all feeling this. We see, it's so visible now. When things go wrong, it's more visible than it's ever been. And so it can make people feel that, what's the point? Anybody got any thoughts on this?
I'll jump in. As a small business owner who has built the entire business for the last decade fully on our ethics as our sort of standpoint first and foremost, it is disheartening when organizations don't care about the ethics and they quite publicly aren't interested in that. Sometimes, yes, we've lost contracts because I've said, well, our base rate pay for our team is going to be here because that's what the market says it should be for somebody who's as qualified as this. And they've come back and said, no, that's way beyond our budget. We want to pay this. And I'm like, well, you're underpaying people and that will actually go below minimum wage. And they've still gone with the other people. So do you want to work with people who don't have any ethics and don't care about you as an organization enough to make sure you can feed your team? The people are getting paid enough to pay their rents and the mortgages. My suggestion is probably you don't want to work with those people, and it will bite them eventually. To try and focus your energy on people who do want to work with, that kind of ethical practice and where you share those values. I think actually what we're seeing is a push in the opposite direction, where local government, larger organisations like we're hearing about Barclays and so on, are looking specifically for anyone they're working with, anyone in their supply chain, to be able to evidence their policies and practices, their ethical alignments, their sustainability practices. We're seeing that more and more. I work with universities quite a lot, and I work with a lot of national charities. I've worked for the Soil Association that Lauren's part of, all across the country. And I always am being asked to provide the evidence of that work and of the impact that we're having. So I think, although it doesn't always feel like it, I think they are actually few and far between. I think even the big organizations like, the big banks and stuff are having to really move and refocus and look at the ethical elements, because consumers want it. We reckon about 50% of consumers are specifically looking for ethical trade-in logos or something on your website or on your product. So moving into that area is going to be beneficial long term.
I couldn't agree more, Sabrina. That what we're finding now is even people who, on the board may not be 100% behind everything ethical. What we're finding is that it's driven by the fundamentals, which is when we're pitching for business, we have no choice, and so our clients are looking for those kind of high standards. And so it's good for business. Being good is good for business, I think. Thank you for that question, Marwan. That was a great question. And you also ask, can we get a copy of the slide deck as well? I believe that's okay with everybody, but we will also make sure that there's this is all recorded, so you can also pick it up from the website as well. But I think what the IOD will do after the event is they send out an email so you can pick up all the stats and the links. So before we finish up, just wanted to go back around the room. Lauren, Simon, Sabrina, Julieta, what's the one thing you want to leave with our audience today? If I start with you, Lauren.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be here today, and thanks to you and the panelists and to everyone listening in and watching. I think for me, the thing that I would love to leave is just that ethics isn't this kind of difficult abstract concept. It's really useful, and actually by getting to understand the way in which you can apply it to your business, you can make real benefits for you, for your people, and for your business as well. And I think that is working in alignment with your values is a very human thing, and it does genuinely, not only is better for business, it feels better for you too. So yeah, do reach out. I loved Sabrina's comments about just make this easy, don't kind of, this is accessible for people. So yeah, no, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lauren. Simon, coming to you next. What's the one thing you want to leave with our audience? Apart from come to Northampton University.
Come to Northampton, it's lovely. We've got a brand new campus. I think it's about being prepared to be brave. The example I gave of Faith in Nature did their thing in 2022. 3 years later, they're still the company everybody talks about. So it was brave of them at the time, but actually they're now the leaders in that area. So it isn't as hard as it used to be. If you, I'm going to sound like some kind of film cliche. If you behave properly and ethically, it will be good for you as an individual. It'll be good for you as a company. It'll be good for your stakeholders, and the benefits just roll on. So I think it's just take that jump. And what was really, what I'm really pleased with is A, there's a lot of people in the audience, and B, I'm used to being kind of out there a bit and a bit left field with stuff, and it's great. This is much more mainstream than I was expecting, which is fantastic. So happy days.
Thank you, Simon. Julieta, what's the one thing you want to leave with our audience today?
I believe the most important thing is remind that we are not talking about philanthropy. Everything we are talking here is about business, and sustainability, and that mean profitability, mean sustainable and resilient growth. And that is not again about lecture preaching. It's a business discussion here. Then I hope that this is the message as being perfect clear. And I would like to say as well, I'm very optimistic. Even I hear what Marwan said. It's keep going, keep doing, keep swimming, doing what you are doing, the right thing that will succeed.
Thank you. Thank you. And then Sabrina, finally to you.
First of all, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to continue this conversation with people who are interested. But my thing would be, actually, there's three key principles when we're talking about ethics and sustainability. And if you focus on them, you're generally going to get things right. So the first one is people care. Second one is caring for the planet, whatever, whether that's in the small or in the more, broader scale. And the last one is what we call fair shares. So it's about making sure resources are available, not just for you for now, but going forward and for other people. So it's kind of three core principles that allow us to work in an ethical way that we think is sustainable. And it's quite simple. It's much more complicated mechanisms, but as a starting point, I would say people care, earth care, and fair shares is a good step.
Great starting point. Thank you. So that comes to the end of our time here today. First of all, a massive thank you to Lauren and the Institute of Business Ethics for partnering with us today, and to a brilliant panel of speakers, Simon, Julieta, and Sabrina. Thank you all for your generosity and sharing your knowledge and expertise. And finally, to the audience, thank you all for joining us. Goodbye.